Back off, ape. This car is HOA property. Imagine waking up to that. Those exact words, spat out like spoiled milk by a guy in cheap tactical pants who had neighborhood compliance stenciled across his chest. 3 of them, actually, all clumped around the boom arm of a tow truck that was actively chaining your vehicle right out of your own driveway. Chains clanging, hydraulics groaning, a clipboard waving around like it was the Constitution itself. That was my Tuesday morning. About 6 months ago, and I remember thinking, here we go again. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, especially the HOA queen across the street aiming her iPhone like a weapon, was exactly who I was. My name is Elias Thorne. I'm 42, and yeah, I'm black. I'd spent 18 years of my life in the kind of places where compliance meant the difference between getting home for dinner and becoming an international incident. I was an operator, specialized in forced entry, a SWAT breacher for the state police for years, and frankly, I had seen enough. I retired early, bought this modest ranch-style house in the Creekwood Reserve subdivision just outside Austin, a place where I could fix cracked concrete, rebuild loose fences, and maybe, just maybe, not have to measure chaos before it started. I wanted peace, man, slow mornings and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. My truck, a beautiful midnight blue Ford F-250 King Ranch, was my last indulgence, parked legally at the curb for 2 years. Never once blocked a sidewalk, never broke a rule. I knew the HOA bylaws, volume 1 through 7, better than I knew the ingredients in my chili, and that's saying something. But a couple of weeks before that Tuesday, something yellow and ugly appeared on my windshield. A violation notice, screaming in bold red letters. Vehicle subject to towing, non-compliant aesthetic. They cited some arcane rule about commercial vehicles disrupting the neighborhood vista. Now, it wasn't the truck that bothered me. It was the arrogance in that notice, that tone that didn't ask questions, that just assumed guilt. I peeled it off, careful not to tear it, folded it into quarters, and slipped it into my pocket like a piece of evidence. That was the old instinct rising, the part of me that measures threats. That evening, I walked down to the community center, I call it the dungeon, where the HOA board sat under those sickly fluorescent lights. At the center, of course, was Brenda Carmichael, self-appointed president, neighborhood tyrant, a woman whose scarf looked like she was trying to wear armor. Next to her was her little lapdog, the treasurer, Mr. Miller, who avoided eye contact like a snake in the grass, and then the guy from the property management company, the grunt they paid to do their dirty work. Brenda didn't greet me. She just looked down at a sheet she clearly hadn't read and started with that condescending drawl, "Rules are rules. Mr. Thorne, oversized utility vehicles simply aren't in keeping with the Creekwood ethos." I stood steady, arms relaxed, my voice a low, even hum that only veterans truly hear. "It's street legal, Brenda. Registered personal use. Show me the exact bylaw that prohibits a Ford F-250 at a public curb." She actually waved her hand like she was shooing a fly. "The board has discretion, Elias. Multiple complaints have been filed about your monstrosity disrupting the view." Her eyes flicked toward Miller, who just melted further into his chair. And that's when I went for the jugular. Quiet, but cutting. "Disrupting the view? What about your own son's rusted-out speedboat on a trailer that's been sinking into the weeds on your lawn for 6 weeks? Expired tags, broken axle." Brenda stiffened, her jaw tight, that armor scarf suddenly feeling heavy. "We are not discussing my personal life." That sentence, that smug dismissal, it hit me like a switch. It was the perfect distillation of everything wrong with people like her. Rules for everyone else, exceptions for themselves. An old buried edge in me stirred awake. I turned without a single word and walked out. I didn't need to argue, didn't need to explain. Because when a man like Elias Thorne goes quiet, truly quiet, it means the planning has already begun. 2 days later, just after sunrise, I heard the noise, that harsh metal clank, the unmistakable groan of hydraulics. Intrusion. I pulled back the curtain and saw it. A tow truck angled across my driveway, its boom locked onto the rear axle of my F-250. And there they were, the neighborhood compliance squad in their fake tactical gear, clustered around the rig. I stepped outside. No jacket, just worn jeans, an old black t-shirt. My face was unreadable, but my voice carried that low, controlled authority that makes trained men freeze. "Put the truck down." The operator, a young guy with his cap backward, froze mid-winch. Then came the voice of victory from across the street. "I warned you, Elias," Brenda crowed, phone raised high. "Now you'll learn what it means to follow the rules." I didn't even look her way. My hands slipped into my back pockets, finding my phone. One tap, then another. "Signal 7, I said evenly into the phone. "Private property breach in progress. Unlicensed enforcement escalation. Location is my residence," I ended the call. No threats, no argument, just finality. I walked back inside, gently shut the door, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down. Outside, the noise died. The tow truck idled nervously. Someone whispered, fast and worried. The silence that follows when people realize they've crossed a line they shouldn't have. 15 minutes later, a matte black Chevy Tahoe eased up to the curb. No sirens, no flashing lights, just quiet authority. 3 men stepped out, broad-shouldered, calm-eyed civilian clothes, but their posture said everything. Then came Dusty Rhodes, taller, heavier, my old team leader, a gray goatee already forming a smirk. Dusty walked up my driveway. "Heard you pissed off a suburban dictatorship, Thorne." I took a slow sip of coffee. "They came for the truck." Dusty's grin faded as his eyes swept the scene. He crouched beside the F-250, scanning the tow chain with a penlight. No visible damage. "But this clamp," he tapped the connection, "not meant for private property. Not without a verifiable court order or legal HOA standing." One of his guys circled the tow truck, taking photos, flipping through paperwork he found on the dash. "No license match," he called out. "This company isn't even registered for residential enforcement under Travis County Code." He paused, furrowing his brow. "And this work order, paid through an HOA fund earmarked for playground maintenance." I stood quietly, arms crossed. Dusty straightened up, brushing dust from his jeans. "Yeah," he said flatly. "This isn't going to age well, Brenda." He turned toward the nervous contractor, who looked like his clipboard was his only shield. "We're going to need statements." Dusty's tone shifted from friendly to official. "Tow operator, HOA contact, fund allocation, invoice trail. All of it." He leaned closer to me and lowered his voice. "We can file this as federal fraud, man. Public funds used for private coercion. That's open season." I shook my head once. "Start local. Containment is cleaner than escalation." Dusty's team moved with a quiet, devastating precision, photographing, documenting, logging every single infraction. Within an hour, my kitchen table was an evidence board. Scanned invoices. Copies of HOA fund withdrawals labeled as executive morale stimulus and seasonal landscaping contingency. The fraud was clear, obvious, and traced right back to Brenda Carmichael. Dusty compiled everything. Handed me a flash drive. "You know who to send this to." I was in my F-250 half an hour later, engine rumbling low, headed for the precinct downtown. By noon, the files were on Detective Martinez's desk. When the old cop scrolled through the evidence, his expression turned grim. "She's been cutting herself checks for almost a year, unvoted, unreported. And she personally ordered the tow, using funds meant for the swing set. She's finished," Martinez concluded. By sunset, the quiet returned to Creekwood Reserve, but it was a different kind of quiet. The first unmarked patrol car eased around the corner, stopping across from Brenda's house. A moment later, the matte black Tahoe rolled up. Dusty stepped out calm as ever, followed by a county investigator and a financial crimes agent. Inside, Brenda's blinds snapped shut, but not fast enough. She stumbled to the door, robe half-tied, panic setting in. Dusty called out evenly, his voice carrying across the lawn without needing to shout. "Brenda, open the door or we'll get a real breacher to handle it." She cracked the door, trying to sound composed. "I don't understand." "I haven't done anything wrong." Dusty's tone stayed flat, professional. "We've got your financials, Brenda. 11 months of self-issued stimulus payments, misused HOA funds, and unlicensed contractors. You've been signing checks to yourself like you own the town." Her mouth opened, then closed. No lawyer, no board to hide behind, no excuses left. The officers entered quietly. 42 minutes later, she was escorted out, formally detained, her property sealed for audit. I never moved. I stayed on my porch the whole time, coffee still warm, watching as balance reasserted itself the only way it ever should, through evidence, process, and the kind of patient, disciplined waiting I learned on the job. When the last car rolled away, I stepped down to the curb. Across the street, the HOA community board had a new notice stapled to it, bold black text on plain white paper. Effective immediately, all Creekwood Reserve HOA executive authority is suspended pending investigation. No signatures, no apology, just the truth. I walked back to my porch. No smile, no gloating, just peace. My midnight blue F-250 still sat curbside, legal, spotless, unmoved. Justice had spoken, and silence was its echo. Now, I want to know what you think. Who was the real criminal here? The one who broke a silly rule by an inch, or the one who broke the law to enforce their personal power? If you believe true justice doesn't need noise, just proof and persistence, smash that like button. And tell me in the comments, if you were Elias, would you have chosen local enforcement or gone for the federal fraud charges right away? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes the loudest victories are the ones won in silence.